My unfaithful wife completely shattered our marriage. Sarah, my 37-year-old wife, started a new job about 4.5 months ago, and with it, she made some new friends. I'm 36, and from the start, I wasn't a fan of these people. They seemed to be the type who thrived on playing the victim, a group of hardcore feminists and self-proclaimed social justice warriors. You know the kind. The kind of people who'd get mad if you held the door open, but also mad if you didn't. Basically, there was no winning with them. At first, I just shrugged it off. Honestly, I even chuckled about it to myself. But as the weeks turned into months, I started noticing unsettling changes in Sarah. We've been married for 11 years, and we have two amazing kids together, a 10-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son. Lately, though, things had been spiraling. Every little thing I did seemed to spark a fight. She'd accuse me of all kinds of crazy things, like claiming I was inherently bad just because I'm a man, tying it to how men had historically oppressed women. Suddenly, the thoughtful gestures she used to appreciate became reasons for arguments. It was exhausting, but I tried to stay calm and understanding. When the fights got particularly heated, I'd say something like, "I don't understand why you're upset with me. The only thing I've ever done wrong here is loving you." That would usually make her go quiet, only for her to come back the next day with another version of the same argument. About 5 weeks ago, though, something shifted, like a punch to my gut. That's when I knew something wasn't just off, something was seriously wrong. One night, Sarah came home much later than usual without giving me a heads up. Her phone was unreachable the entire time, and when she finally did walk through the door, she was visibly drunk. Her attitude was ice-cold and distant. When I brought it up the next day, she brushed me off, saying I was being controlling and paranoid, that I was overanalyzing everything. But then it happened again, and again. Each time, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than she was letting on. I tried to check her phone, hoping to find answers, but I couldn't find anything concrete. Most of her messages seemed conveniently wiped clean. The only thing I did find was a conversation with one of her new friends. They were talking about how she should go about bringing up the idea of an open relationship with me. That's when it all clicked for me. My gut had been screaming the truth all along. Sarah was cheating. In that thread, Sarah had casually mentioned that she planned to talk to me about the idea of an open relationship on what turned out to be the second Monday of December. This was supposed to be a quiet day for us. Our kids were staying with their grandparents for an early Christmas celebration. The plan was for both of us to join them later that same day. But instead, Sarah decided breakfast was the perfect time to drop this bombshell, like it was just a random idea that had popped into her head. "What do you think about an open relationship?" she asked, acting like it was no big deal. Lucky for me, I was ready. I'd seen this kind of thing play out enough times on Reddit to know there wasn't much hope of fixing this. My focus now was survival, protecting myself and, more importantly, the kids. I had already set my phone to record, knowing that staying calm and composed would be key. I didn't shout or lose my temper. Instead, I went into what I can only describe as a steely interrogation mode. She started out smug, confident even, but that changed the second she caught the look on my face. "Me? Who is he?" "Sarah, what? What are you talking about?" She tried to act confused, like she had no idea where this was going. "Me? If you're going to have this conversation with me, then at least do me the courtesy of being honest. Don't treat me like an idiot. If you can't be upfront, what's the point of even talking?" "Sarah, I don't understand what you mean." "Me? If you lie to me, then this discussion about our marriage isn't happening. It's clear you're hiding something. So, who's the guy?" "Sarah, I'm not." "Me?" Cutting her off. "Oh my God, it's more than one, isn't it?" Sarah, visibly faltering, "Me? Stop. Don't lie to me. You've already obliterated any trust one had in you. Either you're honest with me right now, or this is over. I'll file for divorce. No debate. No discussion. Do you understand me?" "Sarah, but..." "Me? Say it. Say that you understand. If I catch you lying, our marriage is done. I already know more than you think. So, be truthful, or we're over. Tell me you get that." "Sarah, I understand." At that point, she finally started talking. First, She admitted to having 2 one-night stands while out with her friends. I pressed her for details, their names, whether they were married, and if she used protection. Both of these men were married and had kids of their own. Then, to my absolute shock, she told me she was planning to sleep with a coworker from her office. Not only that, but she was determined to pursue this because she felt it was good for her, and insisted I had no right to stop her. What the hell? I stayed calm but asked more questions. She gave me the coworker's name, as well as his wife's name. Apparently, this guy is married too, but supposedly in an open relationship, exactly the kind of dynamic Sarah wants to bring into our marriage. But that wasn't even the worst of it. She went on to suggest that she'd help me by setting me up with some of her friends. According to her, one of them was especially eager to get involved. I couldn't believe the audacity. I've met this friend before, and let me just say, there's no universe where I'd ever go there. I told her plainly, I'm not interested. I asked Sarah for her phone, and to my surprise, she showed me the unlock pattern without much resistance. As soon as she headed to the bathroom, I locked myself in my office, ignoring her frantic shouts and pounding on the door. While she was losing it outside, I ran recovery software on her phone to retrieve deleted content. What I found was nothing short of devastating, clear, undeniable evidence of her betrayals. It didn't stop there. I also installed a monitoring app I'd purchased from an online service, ensuring I could keep tabs on anything else she might try to hide. When I came out of the office, I handed her the phone back and told her she needed to leave. That set her off. She was furious, shouting at me about how controlling I was and accusing me of trying to hold her back. Just like men have always held women back, as she put it. She claimed I'd never truly loved her, insisted she had every right to do what she'd done, and ranted about how I should have simply accepted it because it wasn't a big deal. I didn't engage. My responses were limited to 1 or 2 words, if that. While she stormed around yelling, I focused on packing her things. By the time I was done, I stood at the front door, waiting silently for her to run out of steam. Finally, she left, reluctantly heading to her parents' house. As she walked down the stairs, I called out, "You're single now. Go do whatever you want. I'm not controlling you anymore. My lawyer will be in touch in January." When she turned back to argue, I slammed the door in her face and locked it. Later that night, I watched through the monitoring app as Sarah vented to her friends. They were hyping her up, telling her how strong she was and encouraging her to fight for what she was entitled to. They claimed I was bluffing and wouldn't follow through with the divorce. What really disturbed me, though, was when one of her friends suggested that if necessary, she could accuse me of domestic abuse. Another chimed in, bragging about how she had done just that to her ex-husband and managed to take everything from him. That was a wake-up call. I immediately ordered security cameras for the house. I knew I'd need to record and document everything from this point forward. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I've never even raised my voice at Sarah, let alone threatened her. It only got worse. She started messaging her affair partner, AP, arranging to meet him at a hotel. I was stunned by her audacity. Determined to take some sort of action, I searched online and quickly found the AP's wife. She accepted my friend request on Facebook, and I didn't hold back. I told her everything, including the details of their planned meetup at the hotel. She thanked me, hung up, and a few hours later sent me a video that left me reeling. She had gone to the hotel, barged into the room, and confronted them. The video showed her screaming at her husband, calling him every name in the book. Apparently, this wasn't the first time he cheated. "You lying bastard. You do this to me again? To the kids? I told you we were done if this ever happened again." The camera then panned to Sarah, sitting on the edge of the bed, hastily pulling on her clothes. Watching that footage made me physically ill. The AP's wife slapped Sarah and unleashed a tirade of curses before storming out. After seeing that, I sent Sarah a blunt message. "I saw the video from the hotel. Don't ever come near me again." She responded like this was some sort of twisted competition, acting like she was winning somehow. It's beyond comprehension. She seems entirely detached from reality, completely unaware that this marriage is over. To make things clear, I logged into her family's WhatsApp group and announced our divorce, citing her infidelity as the reason. I thanked them for their kindness toward me over the years, then left the group. I've since received several calls and messages from her family, but I haven't responded. I simply don't have the energy for it. I called my parents to explain everything. My father didn't mince words. He messaged Sarah directly, letting her know she was no longer welcome for Christmas. I'm staying at my parents' house now, trying to piece my life back together. I spoke with my boss, and thankfully, he's been understanding. He's given me time off until mid-January to sort things out. Meanwhile, I've been keeping an eye on Sarah's increasingly desperate conversations with her new circle of friends. It's clear she hasn't fully grasped the reality of what's happening. She's lost her family, her marriage is over, and those so-called friends and her affair partner don't actually care about her. Sarah's been relentless with her messages, and she even showed up at my parents' house, demanding to celebrate Christmas with us. My dad wasn't having it. He threatened to call the police if she didn't leave, and that finally got her to back off. Now, I'm sitting here Googling divorce lawyers while crying my heart out. I think I've been in shock this whole time, but the pain has finally caught up to me since I got here. It's unbearable. Every time I read their chats or think about her, it's like another dagger to the chest. I've barely responded to her messages. Only twice, and even that felt like too much. It doesn't matter what you say. I don't know who you are anymore. You're not my wife. My wife would never destroy my heart and soul with a smile on her face. We are getting divorced. I don't care what you say or want. You have no right to demand anything from me ever again. This is over. Like I said, you're not my wife. I don't recognize you. The woman I married would never condemn our kids to the pain of growing up in a broken home. But you? You seem proud of what you've done. My wife was loving, caring, and my best friend. You're nothing but a self-centered, self-absorbed stranger to me. After that last message, she stopped texting. But the silence doesn't make the pain any easier. Sometimes it feels like it's too much to bear. I find myself wishing none of this had ever happened, longing for a way back to the life we had. But deep down, I know there's no going back. I can't do that to myself. This is, without a doubt, the worst Christmas I've ever had. It broke me to sit my kids down and explain what's happening. I told them as gently as I could, Mommy doesn't want to be a family anymore. She wants to be with other men, so we're going to get a divorce. They were devastated, of course. Thankfully, my mom and dad have been here to step in where I've fallen short. They've been showering the kids with love and attention while I stumble through my own grief. I'm a wreck right now, and I don't know how I'd be managing without them. I'm trying to pick myself up for the sake of my kids, but one thing is clear. I'm never going back to Sarah. The thought of looking at myself in the mirror if I did that is unbearable. Her blatant disrespect and the coldness she's shown throughout this entire ordeal are beyond forgiveness. I do regret blurting everything out to the kids before Christmas, though. They asked when their mom was coming back, and I just couldn't hold it in. I wish I'd waited so I could get them into counseling right away, but I was overwhelmed in the moment. Now, all I can do is focus on moving forward. Still, I can't make sense of any of this. How does she think she has the right to demand anything from me? It's baffling. I can't help but wonder if there's something wrong with her mentally, because nothing about her behavior makes sense. Sorry if this all comes across as a disorganized rant. I just needed to let it out. Edit. After consulting a lawyer that a friend recommended, I've confirmed that monitoring Sarah's phone is entirely legal. The phone and the subscription are in my name, so as the owner, I'm within my rights to track it. That gives me some peace of mind amidst all this chaos. Cheating wife ruined family and Christmas. Why does she think I'm supposed to accept her behavior? A lot has happened since I last posted, though I can't take much credit for handling things well. Honestly, I've been a wreck, a crying, pathetic mess. I became obsessed with reading Sarah's chats with her friends. The things she said about me and our family are beyond hurtful. The part that finally broke me, though, was reading her describe our marriage, and even our kids, as a burden in her life. She said we held her back from being a successful woman and living her best life. According to her, I'm some oppressive pig who's been stifling her potential. She claimed that without us, she could have had an incredible career, countless casual flings, and a much more fulfilling existence. That shattered me. I spent the next 30 hours or so rereading every single email and chat, over and over again, trying to understand. Looking back, none of it made sense. She never gave any concrete examples of how we were supposedly burdens or how I was oppressive. They were all blanket statements without a single shred of proof to back them up. The truth is, I've done nothing but support her in every way possible. She's worked part-time for minimum wage, and I've covered nearly all of our expenses. I've encouraged her dreams even when they didn't pan out, like the countless college classes she signed up for and never finished. I've always been there for her. I've romanced her, taken her on dates, and made sure she knew how much I appreciated her. If that's what she calls oppression, then sign me up for a little oppression myself, because it sure doesn't sound like what she's describing. But, as painful as it is to admit, her words make it clear that she doesn't see the love, effort, or care I've given her. And now, I have to accept that the woman I thought I knew is gone. Or maybe she was never really there to begin with. At some point during my obsessive rereading of those chats, I completely passed out. When I finally woke up, I could hear voices coming from the kitchen. To my surprise, my dad was in there cooking dinner with my 3 best friends, Mike, Bob, and Frank. I've known these guys since we were kids, and they've always been like brothers to me. Apparently, my dad had filled them in on everything and brought them over to support me. The moment I saw them, I broke down all over again. I was an emotional wreck and stayed that way until Friday evening. Mike, who served in the military, lost his left arm below the elbow years ago. We all stood by him during his recovery, especially when his wife walked out on him. Thankfully, they didn't have kids, and Mike eventually adopted 2 wonderful children and has been dating an amazing woman for the past few years. He's doing well now. Mike set up a Zoom call for me with the counselor who helped him after his injury. This counselor specializes in working with amputees, but the insights he shared about emotional trauma were life-changing for me. He explained that just as amputees experience phantom pain in a missing limb, I would feel a similar kind of phantom pain from the part of my soul tied to my marriage and identity as a husband. A part of me that is now, essentially, dead. Hearing that made so much sense. We spent hours talking, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was starting to understand what was happening to me. Bob, on the other hand, works as an executive for some high-level security company. He doesn't talk much about his job, but it's clear he's done well for himself. Without me even asking, Bob contacted a top-notch law firm his company has on retainer. By Sunday morning, I was on the phone with a lawyer I couldn't have afforded in a million years. Bob insisted on covering all the costs, saying it was the least he could do after everything I'd done for him growing up. Apparently, he still remembers how I used to step in and take the beatings from bullies who targeted him. Bob said this was his way of finally repaying me for that. Then there's Frank. He's a teacher at a private school and is married with, get this, 7 kids. My own kids adore him and his family, and the feeling is mutual. Frank has been helping out with my kids while I try to pull myself together and figure out my next steps. Yesterday was absolutely chaotic. The day began with an STD screening at the crack of dawn. Turns out the lovely parting gift from my wife's adventures was chlamydia. Great. I'll have to go for another screening in 6 months. That news sent me straight from self-pity into pure rage. That was the moment I decided. No more playing nice. Gloves off. I'm going for full custody, and I'll give her as little as possible in the divorce. The lawyer Bob connected me with managed to track down the ex-husband of one of Sarah's feminist friends, the one who had bragged about screwing him over in court. Apparently, it wasn't hard to find him through the court records. I reached out to him on WhatsApp, and he was incredibly grateful. He also shared the horrifying details of what his ex-wife had done to him, which made my stomach turn. This man had been left homeless and hadn't seen his kids in nearly 4 years, all because of her lies. Hearing his story broke my heart, but also lit a fire under me. Now I know exactly what I'm up against, and I'm not going to let Sarah pull the same tricks on me. I'm gearing up for a fight, whatever it takes to protect my kids and my future. I've come to terms with the fact that, as a man, I'm at a disadvantage in the court system. That's just the reality. But I'm determined to build an airtight case. I've been gathering as much evidence as possible to protect myself and, most importantly, my kids. My lawyer suggested we make a preemptive move by filing for a restraining order. Her reasoning was solid. Sarah's openly negative and aggressive comments about men, especially the impact those attitudes could have on our son, could make a strong case for full custody. Growing up in a home with a parental figure who's blatantly anti-male would be incredibly harmful. I agreed with the plan, and the lawyer expects Sarah to be served with the restraining order sometime today. We had a Zoom call recently, the first time I've spoken to Sarah since she showed up at my parents' house to argue with my dad. She hasn't reached out to me, the kids, or anyone else in the family since. It's clear she doesn't care about any of us. The call was bizarre, to put it mildly. Sarah showed up looking like she was heading to a nightclub, full makeup, hair done, and a low-cut top that practically screamed for attention. Honestly, I haven't seen her that dressed up in years. From the start, she was trying to provoke me, baiting me into losing my temper. But I kept my cool. My lawyer had prepped me well, emphasizing that showing an effort toward an amicable resolution before filing for a contested divorce could work in my favor. I was recording the call and even made sure to inform her. Sarah didn't disappoint. The first thing out of her mouth was this absurd commentary about penises. Something about how some stay roughly the same size, whether erect or not, while others grow significantly. I mean, seriously? Who starts a call with their husband like that? Then she casually mentioned how she couldn't wait for restrictions to lift so she could explore this topic in person. My response was simple and calm. I'm not interested in your hobbies. I'm only here to discuss our divorce. That really seemed to irritate her. When she realized I wasn't taking the bait, her hostility became more overt. At one point, she muted herself and claimed she was going to the bathroom. But I could see her consulting with her friends, trying to strategize what she could do to mess with me further. Throughout the call, she cursed me out multiple times simply for being a man. The whole interaction felt surreal, like she thought this was some kind of game where she held all the cards. She acted as if I had no choice but to roll over and accept whatever she demanded. When it became clear we weren't making any progress on the divorce, I calmly concluded the conversation. All right, a contested divorce it is then. Oh, and by the way, you gave me chlamydia. Unlike you, I haven't been sleeping with anyone else, so you should probably head to the clinic. Her response? A skeptical frown, like she didn't believe me. It was infuriating, but also bewildering. At this point, I genuinely have no idea what's going on in her head, and honestly, I've stopped caring. I sent the recording of our Zoom call to my lawyer, and her reaction said it all. She was absolutely stunned. At this point, everyone around me seems to agree that Sarah has lost her grip on reality. Maybe she really has. Since I own the phone and the subscription, I've confirmed that I can use the chat logs in court. It's entirely legal to monitor my own device, and the evidence I've gathered paints a pretty clear picture. After the call, Sarah and her harpy friends had their usual frantic back and forth, but for the first time, I didn't feel the need to keep tabs on it. I'm done caring about what they talk about. My lawyer seems confident that we'll win this case, as long as there's nothing I've withheld from her. So, here I am. It still stings, but I've started treating the pain like phantom pain, something lingering from a part of me that no longer exists. I've stopped wallowing in self-pity, and now I'm fully focused on protecting myself and my kids. No more holding back. I'm going all in. The kids will be okay. I'll make sure they get all the therapy they need for as long as they want it. As for Sarah, she'll soon be nothing more than a distant memory. It's time to start building a new and better life for us. Edit. I found out today that Sarah knew about the chlamydia all along. She had already gotten treatment, but never bothered to tell me. To make it even worse, she was joking and laughing about it with her friends. I can't even begin to process how callous and disgusting that is. Cheating wife ruined family and Christmas. Why does she think this behavior is acceptable? I've been getting a lot of feedback from people saying that I seem strong, or that I'm somehow winning in all this. And rereading my posts, I can see how my anger might make it seem that way, that I'm confident and sure of myself. But the truth is, I'm not. I don't feel like a winner. I don't feel strong. I wish none of this had ever happened. I wish my family was still whole, that we could have a peaceful, simple future where Sarah and I grow old together while watching our kids build their own lives. But that's gone now. There are no winners here. Sarah has completely gone off the rails. It's like the whole train has derailed and is burning in a ditch, and she's acting like nothing's wrong. I don't know what's going on with her, but she refuses to see a doctor or therapist to address any potential mental health issues. Even now, She shows no remorse, no regret, no self-awareness. It's as if she genuinely believes I'm the unreasonable one for not just rolling over and accepting her terms. The worst part? She's barely spoken to our kids since D-Day. It's like they're an afterthought to her. I don't understand how someone can become so detached, so cold. It's heartbreaking. I'm divorcing Sarah, taking action, and pushing forward with separating our lives because I have no other choice. Her behavior has backed me into a corner, and at this point, there's no turning back. But God, I wish it didn't have to be this way. I cry myself to sleep every night. Not just for what I've lost, but for my kids, who are now going to grow up in a broken home. What hurts even more is that, in practice, my kids no longer have a real relationship with their mother. Here's a question I desperately wish I didn't have to face. What do you say when your child asks, "Why doesn't mommy want to see me anymore? Doesn't she love me?" If anyone out there has an answer, please tell me, because I sure as hell don't know. Every morning, I wake up thinking my heart can't possibly break any more than it already has. And yet, every single day proves me wrong. It's a constant, unbearable ache. Sarah still doesn't seem to realize, or care, that I can monitor her communications. She's convinced I'll never actually go through with leaving her, and that my reaction to her betrayal is completely overblown. Meanwhile, she keeps bad-mouthing me, our marriage, and even our kids to her friends. I can't wrap my head around it. Why does she hate us so much? We've done nothing to deserve the venom she spews about us. The things she says to her friends about what our family supposedly did to her. It's pure fiction. As I mentioned earlier, my lawyer managed to get a temporary restraining order against her. But at a hearing yesterday morning, since there hadn't been any new direct threats, it wasn't extended. Now, my lawyer is advising me to use the fact that Sarah knowingly infected me with an STD as leverage to push for an uncontested divorce. As much as I hate the idea of resorting to tactics like this, it might be the only way to keep things from spiraling into an even bigger disaster. I just want this to end in a reasonable, straightforward process. I hate that I have to see her as an enemy, constantly preparing for the worst-case scenario. If she had simply wanted to leave me, I could have accepted that. It would have been painful, but I could have lived with it. Instead, she's forced me into this toxic, adversarial battle. And for what? Why go out of her way to hurt the very people who loved her the most? What could she possibly stand to gain from causing all this pain? I truly appreciate any insights, because none of this makes sense to me. If this goes to court, I'll likely have to pay Sarah a lump sum for her share of the equity in the house and other assets. Thankfully, I probably won't be on the hook for alimony, and since she's shown little to no interest in the kids, I'm hopeful that I'll win custody if it comes to that. Still, my lawyer has advised that we try to get Sarah to agree to an amicable divorce first. I agreed. It's worth a shot, and we're hoping to meet with her and her representative sometime this week. New Year's Eve was bittersweet. The ex-husband who'd been defrauded by Sarah's friend spent the evening with me and the kids. His story is just heartbreaking. The way the court system can stack the deck against fathers is appalling. His ex lied through her teeth in court, and her baseless claims were taken as fact without any evidence. As a result, he's barely seen his kids and has been crushed under the weight of excessive alimony and child support payments. It's all but destroyed him. He even admitted he'd been contemplating ending things for good. But with the evidence I've shared with him, he finally has some renewed hope. We both had a conversation with my lawyer, and she suggested he hold on to the evidence for now. If he acts on it too soon, it'll reveal that we have access to all of their communications. Instead, she plans to use this as leverage during my divorce proceedings to hopefully expedite the process. At this point, all I want is to get away from Sarah as quickly and cleanly as possible. If she decides to fight, this could drag on for months, or even years, and the thought of that is absolutely draining. I'll post an update if we manage to have the meeting, or if it heads straight into a contentious court battle. Cheating wife ruined family and Christmas. Why does she think this is acceptable behavior? Unfortunately, the absurdity continues. Yesterday afternoon, we finally had the meeting with my lawyer and Sarah. It was a disaster from the start. She showed up 30 minutes late, didn't bring a lawyer, and claimed she didn't need one. Instead, she brought along one of her new harpy friends. Before the meeting, my lawyer gave me very clear instructions on how to handle myself. I wasn't to react negatively to anything they said, no matter how provocative. If they addressed me directly, I was to respond calmly, non-confrontationally, or positively if possible. Most importantly, if my lawyer placed both hands flat on the table, that was my cue to stay completely silent. Sarah and her friend arrived late, without masks, of course. From the moment they walked in, the friend made it her mission to insult me and push every button she could think of. Sarah joined right in, and the two of them were laughing at their own crude jokes like it was some kind of stand-up routine. Meanwhile, my lawyer kept trying to steer the conversation back to the actual purpose of the meeting, our divorce. But they weren't interested in discussing anything serious. The entire time, they treated it like a game, laughing and making snide remarks. It was painfully cringeworthy to watch. It's painfully clear that Sarah still believes this is all some elaborate bluff. In her mind, I couldn't possibly go through with divorcing her. She genuinely thinks that only she can initiate a divorce, and even then, only on her terms. And of course, she assumes she'll walk away with everything. As I sat there watching her behavior, all I could think was, what the hell is going on? I didn't say much of substance during the meeting. I just offered non-committal responses like, yes, you're probably right, or, I really don't know. Eventually, they ran out of steam. That's when my lawyer took over and began outlining the proposed settlement for an amicable divorce. One of the first points she made was that I was willing to be generous to achieve a quick, peaceful resolution. She mentioned that I would pay Sarah a lump sum of $60,000 to cover her share of the equity in the house, investments, and other assets. Before my lawyer could even finish the sentence, Sarah lit up. She got all excited and, with her friend egging her on, immediately wanted to know where she could sign. My lawyer asked several times if Sarah wanted to review the rest of the agreement before signing, but she couldn't care less. She was too busy talking about when she could expect the money and even mentioned that she and her friend needed to get to the pub to celebrate. At that point, my lawyer called someone into the room and whispered something to them. Suddenly, there was a flurry of activity. An older woman came in, asked for our identification, and handed us 2 copies of the agreement to sign. Once the documents were signed, she stamped them. I later learned she was a notary. With everything finalized, my lawyer, looking almost unnervingly calm, thanked Sarah and her friend and told them we were done. They left without a second thought. Sarah didn't even take her copy of the agreement with her. She left it sitting on the table. My lawyer, keeping her composure, motioned for me to stay quiet until we saw them cross the parking lot. As soon as they were gone, she turned to me and said, "Congratulations." She went on to explain that this had been one of the most bizarre sessions she'd ever experienced during a negotiated divorce. She also mentioned that she would keep Sarah's copy of the agreement in her drawer unless Sarah's lawyer, or a court hearing, required it. Until then, it would remain safely forgotten. On the surface, it looks like I might actually get through this divorce a lot easier than I initially feared. That said, Sarah could still hire a lawyer and contest the agreement, so it's not over yet. My lawyer has been pulling every string she can to get a hearing with a judge as soon as possible, likely via a video call. After some advice I picked up on Reddit, I decided to hire a private investigator, PI. Yesterday, he sent me photos of Sarah making out with 2 different guys at 2 different bars. Later that night, she went to a hotel with one of them. This is just more evidence to add to the growing pile I've collected in case things take a legal turn. For now, the agreement Sarah signed gives me full custody of the kids. There's no spousal support, no ongoing financial obligations, just a one-time payment of $60,000. After that, I'm free. Now I just need to figure out how to come up with the money. Thankfully, Bob has offered to front me the entire amount if necessary. Even so, this doesn't feel real. I can't shake the feeling that Sarah is going to pull some dramatic legal stunt, like accusing me of domestic abuse or something equally outrageous. My lawyer has advised me to keep a low profile, continue paying for everything I normally would, avoid any drama, and don't engage with anyone we both know. For now, the plan is to sit tight, wait for the hearing, and take absolutely no initiative until then. Cheating wife ruined family and Christmas. Why does she think this is okay? Yesterday was the hearing, and I'm essentially divorced now. It will take another 4 to 6 months for everything to be finalized on paper, but But at this stage, nothing can change the outcome unless Sarah and I both agree to halt the process, something that obviously isn't going to happen. I'm beyond exhausted. I don't even know how many days it's been since I last slept properly. If this post feels scattered, I apologize. I just need to let it all out. My lawyer pulled off something incredible by securing an early hearing just 12 days after filing the paperwork. She must have cashed in some serious favors for that. But the time leading up to it has been absolute chaos. On Friday morning, I woke up to a group of police officers knocking on my door with a warrant to search the house. I was completely blindsided and had no idea what was going on. My first thought was for the kids, so I asked if I could bring them outside while the search was conducted. Thankfully, the officers allowed it. They didn't give me much information at the time, but I was handed a copy of the warrant. I was so rattled that I couldn't even make sense of what I was reading. Later, I learned what had happened. Sarah and her group of harpy friends had been driving my car while high and drunk. They crashed it into someone's house at high speed. All of them were arrested at the scene. Police found drugs both in their system and on their persons. One of Sarah's friends, who had been in the passenger seat, is in critical condition, and doctors aren't sure if she'll make it. The so-called lead harpy of Sarah's group, let's call her Henrietta, is the same one who bragged about lying in court to screw over her ex-husband. We'll call him Henry. Henry and I have actually become great friends throughout all this. I'll come back to him in a bit. Thankfully, the police didn't find anything incriminating in my house during their search. I explained that Sarah no longer lives with me and is staying with her parents. No, I hadn't given Henrietta permission to drive my car, let alone crash it into a house. After the officers left, I went back inside and saw the state of my home. Everything was completely trashed. That was it, the last straw. I just broke down. The only thing I could think to do was call my dad. He came over right away, picked me and the kids up, and brought us to my mom's. While I sat on the back porch, sobbing into my mom's comfort food and feeling completely defeated, my dad rallied a small army, 26 friends and family members. While I was busy wallowing, they got to work cleaning and repairing my house from top to bottom. Every single room was cleaned. They washed the walls and ceilings, scrubbed the furniture, did the dishes, and even tackled the laundry. They didn't stop there. They fixed all the little things around the house, like loose door handles. By the time they were done, my home was cleaner and in better shape than it's ever been. I couldn't believe they would do something so incredible for me. I have no idea how I'll ever repay them. Meanwhile, the police searched Henrietta's house and found even more drugs. Her boyfriend wasn't home, and there was no babysitter, just her kids left alone. CPS stepped in immediately and took the children. Henry was granted temporary emergency custody. After presenting the chat logs, along with evidence of the abandonment and the drugs, Henry had no trouble convincing the judge to award him custody. For the first time in years, he has his kids back. He's over the moon. He's barely seen them in the last 5 years, and he's been working tirelessly to raise money for a legal fight against Henrietta. While he still has to go back to court to make the custody arrangement permanent, the odds are heavily in his favor now. Everyone expects Henrietta to serve time, especially if her friend in critical condition doesn't survive the car crash. If that happens, she could face serious prison time. Once the dust settles, Henry plans to pursue child support and possibly compensation for everything Henrietta has put him through. That said, he doesn't seem particularly eager to spend more time in court. What he really wants is to focus on his kids and give them the good life they deserve. It's heartbreaking to think about how neglectful Henrietta has been, but it's clear those kids are finally where they belong, with a parent who truly cares about them. Bob has been an absolute hero throughout all of this. He managed to set Henry up with a rental apartment through a friend of his. Honestly, it's made me realize how little I actually know about Bob's private or professional life. I'm definitely planning to change that. But back to the mess at hand. Henrietta was driving when she crashed the car into a house. Because of the drugs and alcohol involved, the police issued search warrants for everyone connected to the incident. Since Sarah is still officially registered at my address, that meant my house was searched too. By Sunday, I'd made a decision. I'm selling this house and moving as soon as possible. I can't shake the fear that something like this could happen again. Later that same day, I got a call from Sarah's parents. Their house had also been searched. They'd visited Sarah in jail on Saturday and were starting to realize they couldn't trust anything she told them. They came over on Sunday to talk, and that's when the full extent of her lies became clear. It turns out that while Sarah was out partying and cheating, she had been telling her parents she was staying with me, working on our marriage. They had no idea what she'd actually been doing or the damage she caused to me and the kids. She convinced them that her infidelity was a one-time drunken mistake. On Monday, Sarah called me from jail, asking me to post her $15,000 bail. Her parents had already refused. After consulting with my lawyer, we came up with an agreement. I'd cover the bail, but the amount would be deducted from the $60,000 settlement, and her mother would act as the custodian of the remaining funds until Sarah showed up in court and the bail was returned. My lawyer didn't want her to have any excuse to skip the hearing, so I reluctantly agreed. Sarah had no choice but to sign, and she was released Monday afternoon. According to her parents, she refused to follow the conditions they'd set for her to continue living with them. These included quitting drugs, committing to rehab, adopting an open-door policy, and cutting ties with her toxic friends. By Tuesday, she had left their house to stay with some of her new crew. Unsurprisingly, she didn't show up for the court hearing. At the hearing, I presented the judge with everything, including the weekend's events. It only took 30 minutes for the decision. Full custody for me, no spousal support, and the $60,000 lump sum settlement. While it'll take another 4 to 6 months for the paperwork to go through officially, the reality is that it's over. There's nothing Sarah can do now to change the outcome. Which brings me to today. I couldn't sleep at all last night. Everyone around me has been congratulating me, treating this like some kind of victory. But it doesn't feel like that. This isn't a win. It's just pain. The truth is, I still love Sarah. Or at least the person I thought she was. I know it's over. I know there's no going back. But for so many years, she was my best friend, my soulmate. Even though my love for her has been deeply wounded, it hasn't disappeared. And that makes it hurt all the more. There are no winners in this situation. I lose. Sarah loses. Our kids lose. It's like people expect me to celebrate some kind of victory, but it doesn't feel like one. It's like I lost both my legs, but because I took action, one leg was amputated below the knee instead of above, and now I'm supposed to be grateful for saving half a kneecap. It's hollow. When I do manage to sleep, I'm haunted by nightmares that leave me waking up drenched in sweat. I feel like I'm complaining too much, but everything feels so unbearably heavy. Today, I got a call from the hospital. Sarah is still listed as my emergency contact, and she's still on my health insurance. Apparently, there had been an altercation, and she'd been hospitalized. She had lost some teeth, suffered a broken jaw, and needed to stay under observation for a few days. I brought her parents with me when I went to see her. It turns out that her new friends beat her up badly. Word had gotten out that Henry presented chat logs in court, logs taken from Sarah's phone. Her friends assumed she had given the evidence to him, and they retaliated. When I saw her, she didn't ask about her critically injured friend or even mention the court hearing. She just sat there, looking irritated. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw a flicker of regret in her eyes. She said, "I'm sorry I ruined everything," but it didn't feel genuine. She barely even looked at me. For a brief moment, I felt a surge of pity for her, a fleeting desire to protect her. But I can't. She's proven to be dangerous and unpredictable, and my priority has to be protecting my kids. Then she asked if she could move back home. My answer was simple: no way in hell. Her parents have offered to take her back, but only under strict conditions. So far, she hasn't agreed. If she refuses, I have no idea how she'll manage. Any regret she feels doesn't seem to be about what she's done. It's about losing the chaotic lifestyle she thrived on. I've gone completely no contact with her. I told her parents I'd help them financially with her recovery, but only on the condition that Sarah never finds out the support is coming from me. I just can't deal with her anymore. As for her critically injured friend, she's alive but in terrible shape. Out of curiosity, I spoke with her nurse, who told me no one had come to visit her. Her family had been contacted, but they refused to see her. I asked if I could speak with her, and the nurse agreed. When I met her, the first thing she said was to ask if I wanted a favor for $20. That was awkward. Instead, I offered her $50 for information. What she told me was shocking. The group Sarah fell in with are all hardcore drug users. Henrietta, the ringleader, had pulled Sarah into the group despite the others initially objecting. Henrietta convinced Sarah to try drugs and party with them, and it didn't take long for her to develop an addiction. Once Sarah was hooked on drugs, she started prostituting herself to fund her addiction, just like the rest of the group. The critically injured friend admitted openly that all their feminist rhetoric about empowerment was just a facade to mask their shattered self-worth. In truth, they were all selling themselves to sustain their habits. Hearing that about Sarah, the woman I loved so deeply, was utterly devastating. I broke down crying right there in front of her. She described how Sarah started as a casual user, but it quickly spiraled into full-blown addiction, escalating to the point where she began selling her body. According to her, Sarah felt empowered by these actions, fueled by the twisted ideology fed to her by Henrietta and the others. On the legal front, Henrietta is now facing a slew of charges, including drug possession, trafficking, child neglect, prostitution, and more. Bail has been denied due to her being deemed a flight risk, and it's almost certain she'll serve significant prison time. As for Sarah, things took an even darker turn. After attempting to take her own life through an overdose, she was forcibly committed to rehab. Her father managed to secure guardianship over her, ensuring she would finally receive proper treatment. But for me, all of this has come far too late. I've moved out of my house and into a rental apartment in a new area. I still worry about potential retaliation from Sarah's former friends, but so far, nothing has happened. Henrietta's ex-husband, personally stepped in to deal with the men who assaulted Sarah. He's a massive, intimidating guy and gave them an ultimatum: confess to the police or face him. Unsurprisingly, they chose the police. My kids are doing better now. They're beginning to adjust to life without their mom being a regular presence. I explained to them in the simplest terms I could: Mommy is very sick and needs to get better, but she still loves you. That explanation seems to give them some comfort and helps them cope. Through all of this, my parents and friends have been my rock. They've provided stability and love for the kids while I've been working to rebuild my life. Despite everything, I still carry love for Sarah, or rather, for the person she used to be. But that version of her is gone, replaced by someone I no longer recognize. It's going to take a long time to heal from this, but I'm committed to moving forward and creating a better life for myself and my children. To everyone who offered me advice and support, thank you from the bottom of my heart. This will be my last update. It's time to let go of the past and focus on the future. Sarah passed away not long after I wrote this update. She overdosed while in rehab, though it's unclear how she got access to the drugs. This tragedy has left a permanent scar on all of us, but my priority remains being a stable, loving father for my kids. They deserve a life filled with hope and love, and I'm determined to give that to them.